Testing. Thank you, everyone. We'll be starting soon. We will, this is really just an educational workshop where we can have a discussion on the right. We're gonna start with Keone. And make sure everybody has one of these agendas if you don't have one yet. Okay. So we'll have Keone explain where we are.
Aloha kako, o Keone Po'uinoa. Welcome to Halawi Nana. I'm Keone. I work here with Purple Maia Foundation. We're really excited to be hosting this important event and hope we can continue to do so. Halawi Nana is a really awesome space that we're currently stewarding for KS. So through the generosity of Kamehameha Schools, they were able to be in this space. And so our intention is to continue to make this an open community space to host events like this. But we do have a lua over there. Water station is over there, and the Wi-Fi is on the wall. Thanks so much for being here. Happy to have this conversation. And I'm gonna be on a Zoom call for just a little bit for work and then jump in with you all.
Mahalo, Keone. And Keone is our sponsor. He works here, so mahalo to Keone. He's one of our subs as well for the Red Hill CRI, and he's been with the Oahu Water Protectors. My name is Helani Sonora Pale, and I am the representative for the Native Hawaiian community on the Red Hills Community Representation Initiative that was formed back in October of 2023. And I want to mahalo everybody for coming, but first of all, I just want to start off with a pule for our white. And the reason why we do this pule is to focus and center ourselves on why we are here, which is to protect our life. So we're going to do it 3 times, and it's on your agenda. It's on item 2, Ola Ikaha. It was written by Kumu Hula, Kauai Kapu Kalani Hewitt. And it's actually much longer, but I figured this is doable for everyone here. And so if everybody can stand. It's very simple. So I will do the first line and then you guys can just jump in, or you want me to do the whole? Maybe I'll do it once through and then you guys jump in on the second one, okay? Okay. Ola ikaha, ola ikawai, ola ikai, Hawaii, 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 ola ikaha, ola ikawai, ola ikai, Hawaii, 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 ola ikaha, ola ikawai, ola ikai, Hawaii, Hawaii, Hawaii. Hello. So it's just talking about the breath, which also contains water, and that which gives us life, the water that sustains life, and the spirit that perpetuates life. And that is Hawaii. Okay. So I'm gonna do a little bit of introductions, who's in the room, and Rosalie, if you can help me a little bit on who's on Zoom. So I'm just gonna acknowledge who we have here so far. We have Susan Pocola Davis, who's gonna be our first presenter. She's gonna walk us through the Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam, quote unquote, Safe Waters website, which is where the Navy hosts the tests that they do on our flight. So she's kind of an expert on it. She is an expert on it. She's an affected family member. She's from Wanalua. She lives in Waipio now with her ohana, and she's been very involved with the water movement as well. Mahalo, Susan, for being here and for being willing to share your knowledge. Okay, and then we have Erwin Kawata. He is the deputy. wait, Okay, deputy manager, for the Board of Water Supply. He's also a chemist. And, the Board of Water Supply has been a guiding light through this whole past few years dealing with the Red Hill situation and the water crisis. So I want to mahalo Erwin for his willingness to be here. He will be here to answer questions or to clarify. He's an expert in his field, and he understands what should be in the water and what shouldn't be in the water. Okay, also here are members of the Red Hill CRI. And so I want to introduce Susan Gorman Chang. She is representing community. And then Basie Quintero, who is representing the affected families. She's one of the seats, but she's also the vice chair of the Red Hill. Sorry, it's so hot in here. CRI. Oh my gosh, I'm sweating. I thought it was going to be freezing in here. Anyways, and then we have Walter Chang, who is representing the community on the Red Hill CRI committee. And online we have Melody Juha, who is also, she represents the Democratic Party Environmental Committee. Well, thanks. And she's been also very involved with the water movement, as everyone on the committee has been involved with the water movement. And then you have Ilima Di Costa, who is also a Red Hill CRI member, and she represents the community. And then we have Mandy Feint, who is a major in the Army, by the way, but she represents the affected families community along with Basie. So we have most of our committee here. Marty's on her way, our chair, our fearless chair. She represents the community. She sits on one of those community seats. So that's pretty much, and so the Red Hill CRI, we have monthly meetings. What we found was that there isn't enough time to have a really in-depth community discussion in those monthly meetings. So this was an attempt to have one of those discussions, to have Susan, go in depth into her research. She's been very valuable research she's been sharing. And then also a chance for us to ask the Board of Water Supply very pointed questions about TPH. The reason being is that we are getting mixed signals from the Navy, and we're getting mixed signals from the Department of Defense, as well as some of our elected leaders, about what's wrong with the water and what's really in the water, what should be in the water. And so this is an opportunity to clarify some of our questions. The Navy is purposely gaslighting the community and making things a little more confusing than they should be. So this is a point that we want to clarify. We want to clarify what's going on here in this discussions, in these presentations. The third presenter, who's not online yet, his name is Dr. Stephen Havlicek, and he will be presenting on the Navy premise plumbing report, as well as his mana'o, or thoughts on the air monitoring. So he's coming on last, but and at the end we will have a discussion, and if there's any outstanding questions, or if there's something that sticks out, then we want to have that discussion. And this is an opportunity for the CRI to now get input from the community and bring that to the Navy and the EPA. So I just wanted to kind of clarify why we're here and what the purpose of this meeting is today. And are there any questions about the meeting? Sorry if it looks like I'm melting. I thought it was going to be freezing. Anyway, are you ready? Yeah. Okay. So Susan Picola is ready, and she will walk us through the quote-unquote Safe Waters website, which shouldn't be called Safe Waters, right? We all know that. And that's one of our asks of the meeting. Oh, and also one more thing, there's stickers, new stickers with new wording. It's still shut down Red Hill. Defew and clean up their mess, as well as restore Kapukaki. So new language, new stickers, Red Hill's not done, and we won't stop till it's done.
You can,
Can you guys hear me in the back? Okay.
just for everybody on Zoom,
There's a microphone.
yes, Susan, if, for everybody speaking tonight, if you can hold it as close to your mouth as possible, the farther away it is, people are having a little bit of trouble.
It's not gonna make it to the- it's not gonna make it to here.
We can move that if we need to.
One more thing. Sorry, Susan. We're actually on time, so I got 2 minutes. One last thing about the food, there is food, please help yourself. We did our food already. There are musubis, chicken katsu and spam musubis, tossed salad, and mahalo tsukimi for dessert, and then there's waters. So help yourself, this is a very informal learning environment, so just get up and make a plate, thanks.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. Hello. Hello, everybody. On the whiteboard is the website. If you want to go there, that's the first place that you would go. JBPHH dash SAFEWATERS.org. And then it's gonna bring you to this. Where's my screen?
Mouse something, we just put on behind, it's behind the Zoom window.
I'll get there.
Behind. There you go.
Okay, there's the screen. So this is what you see when you first get there. And I'm gonna scroll down. Elsie doesn't want to scroll.
It's scrolling.
Do I need something to go underneath that? A reference game or something?
Which one?
Fingers.
Oh, where did you see that?
So we're gonna click on the drinking water system. It's funny, I'm watching it over there, but I'm supposed to be doing it over here, so I think my mouse is over there, but my mouse is over here. Okay, so then you can scroll down, and you're gonna see this where it says View Interactive Drinking Water Results Map. And that's where you get all the results. You can always watch this instructional video that doesn't tell you anything. But it's real short. Yeah, Mousy. I'll get used to it. Okay, so as you can see, if you look down here, where my mouse is, you're gonna see where the collection of data started. And that's March 11th, 2022. And it goes up to right now, March 8th, 2024. And then you have options to hit a type of screening, which I'll show you that in a moment. The type of analytes, whatever analytes you want to look for. You can look for an address, you can look for a zone. So, audience participation. What would you like me to show you first? If you have an address and you want me to look it up, or you want me to look up the school. Okay, so I'm gonna put elementary, okay?
Give you a hiccup. Oh, this is it.
Oh, good, okay. So we're gonna start with looking for elementary schools like Mahealani did. So see the search button right there? So what she typed in was elementary. And then I'm gonna change the date so it doesn't go all the way to 2022. That's. Be a three. And then. Over here. I'm gonna move that. Well,
Since you started waiting.
so it's gonna be December 1st. 2023. All the way through March 8th. 2024. So that's,
This is.
so the next thing she did, because everybody was curious about TPH. She said, well, let's look for the analyte. So just for this exercise, I'm just gonna type petroleum. Now, what I do is I always select it separately because when you select total, I don't know if it shows you the diesel and the oil separate. So I'm just gonna do it the way I do it. Hold on. You have to hold. You have to hold down the control button if you want to select more than one. So I'm gonna select 3.
Who's on the wrong meeting?
See what I'm trying to do? I'm trying to hold down control and select that.
I'm not. It's a different button on the app, Susan.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, what's the
Command. Command.
Control?
Is it shift control?
It's like
Command.
command.
Okay. Oh, okay, so you want to do it? Like that? Okay. So we got them all. And now we're gonna go to screening.
Susan, will you use the mic?
Oh,
Thank you.
we're gonna go to screening and we're gonna select detection. I mean, I don't know why anyone would want not detected, but I guess Davey would want it just to show good stuff, right? Okay, then I usually move my mouse over here just to see. It's gotta do its thing. school, and didn't I have elementary in there? Yeah. Oh, now I can check the different elementary schools. And we know we want to go ahead and hit them, because I forget those three keys. Control, command,
Shift command, click,
shift, control, command, right?
shift command.
Shift command. We should just select them all, because like you may not. Doing shift command. Ah, you got it. You should just be able to. I'm making the canvas, so you should just be able to click it from.
But he said his name isn't coming out. It's not on the
No,
picture.
There are schools that are on the.
Airplane
Wi-Fi.
flight civilians.
So it's all the schools, even the public schools that aren't on.
Basically,
Right.
we should,
Okay.
we should receive an email.
Okay, so Lacey helped me select several. So now you're gonna see what's coming up. They're detections. And they're all petroleum.
Okay, this is-
Here's another email.
And you have to also look at the dates, like you can actually sort it by dates by just
Because that,
clicking on date. If you're in a zone, you can sort it by location. So see, it came up with A for the, zone A, and then it goes down to D2, depending upon where the schools were. And they're not putting any screening levels, if you can tell right here. They used to have 266, and now, because they want to get rid of 266, they did something in their database and they took that out. So all we're gonna see right now is the actual numbers. And then you can see, can you read this right here? It says petroleum hydrocarbon was detected in a sample collected on February 2024 at concentrations above the project screening level. They need to take this out too.
Yeah.
Further evaluation of the data concluded that the petroleum hydrocarbon detections are not associated with the drinking water system because aliens landed in Hawaii and dropped off TPH in our water. Anyways, they did a resampling on March 8th and it confirms that they're not present in the drinking water. And then you can always click more info below to go to the website for more information. So see what they're gonna tell us. This is the more information source. So see over here, anytime they tell you that we've uploaded stuff to the website, this is the stuff in the place where they're uploading it. Question?
Yeah, maybe I could ask Erwin. When it said on the Navy page that even though there were detections that it's not associated with the drinking water, what in the world does that mean?
Residual chlorine. But go ahead, Ernie. I mean,
no idea.
Neither do we.
I have no idea what that means.
Makes no sense, right?
It makes absolutely no sense. They're doing a test method to look for TPH, the total petroleum hydrocarbon as diesel.
method is specific for that. When you get a result, and then you're saying it's not associated with petroleum, I have no idea what that means.
We thought it was us.
And they're talking about this, the testing 80-50, but there's different versions of 80-50, and then there's also 80-60.
Let me get into that, 80-15, 82-60. Okay, so, all right, why don't we try this? So, okay, so we have what is called the 8,000. Okay, it's called the 8,000 series methods. 8,000, there are different kinds of 8,000. 80-15, 82-60 are most common. Okay, so 8,000 series, those are for hazardous waste. Right? There's also what's called 600 series and 500 series. 8,000 series is for hazardous waste. 600 series is for wastewater. 500 series is for drinking water. Right? So within each of these broad categories, there are different subset or sub methods. So 80-15 under the 8,000 series is for total petroleum hydrocarbon testing. Right? Now, 8,000 hazardous waste contains a lot of different chemicals or contaminants in it. And they contain very high amounts of contaminants. So this method is designed to measure high amounts or very large amounts. But we're applying it to drinking water, which we don't expect it to have these very high amounts of contaminants in it. So one of the first steps you have to do is you have to take this method and apply it to drinking water. Put in small amounts of a contaminant, a known amount of contaminant, and see if you can replicate that in a very accurate way. Now, it stands to reason is that if you can measure a high amount, you should be able to measure a low amount in any drinking water method. 600 series is the same thing in wastewater. We expect a lot of different contaminants to be in wastewater. Right? There's a lot of biologicals, there's lots of all kinds of different contaminants in wastewater. So just like hazardous waste methods, we can measure high amounts. 500 methods is designed for drinking water. So it's designed for very low level detection. Right? So all of the drinking water analysis, we hear EPA say this all the time. Oh, we want to, this 600 method is not good for drinking water because it's not designed for drinking water. It's designed for wastewater. So you have to use a 500. So all of the drinking water regulations is based on 500. So that's why the regulations or EPA will require us to use 500 series method. But that doesn't preclude us to be able to use a 600 against drinking water. Okay? The only step you have to do is make sure you do what is called a method detection limit study. You do a study in the laboratory to replicate low level to make sure this method can detect what you're looking for. So we do that with all of ours. Anytime I apply a 8,000 or even a 600 series method to my drinking water analysis, I go through that NDL study first. I do that laboratory review. I take if we're contracting a laboratory, we'll take a look at that laboratory, go through all of their records, make sure all of their quality controls are acceptable before I let them test our water tests. Okay? So does that kind of clear up that? So what's being applied here is, and the reason 8,000 is that because we expect a lot of different contaminants in hazardous waste, because it gives us the largest amount of potential contaminants to look for, right? As opposed to drinking water. So drinking water, you can't find a TPH method, official method in drinking water. Well, you don't expect it in drinking water. It's not supposed to be there. You'll find, we expect to look for other things like lead, sodium, or things that are very common to drinking water. But we don't expect it to, so you'll never see a 500 series method for oil petroleum hydrocarbon. That's why we're applying the 8,000 series. Okay?
Kathleen has a question. Yeah, Kathleen, something we actually work with Erwin, but this is great because I have questions too. So remember every time the Navy goes out there and says, oh, well, this was never designed for drinking water. Well, he's right, they're right. You just heard Erwin say, well, you can use it, but you have to do certain things. I guess the question you should be asking the Navy is, have you done those other steps to qualify it? Because clearly they're trying to guess, I'm sorry, they're gaslighting us saying, oh, well, see, this isn't a good method because it was never that.
Recording in
Yeah, we use it all. We don't have issues. Listen, I did have a question for you. On the website, at the top, it says, number of samples. How many locations is that? They don't seem to tell you how many locations.
I gotta get back to it.
Curious. That was like learning another language.
Okay. Location sample
Great.
3, federal samples. And then there were 6 analytes tested. That's what this stuff is. But if I didn't have any of these selected, and nothing, no locations, they would tell you the total that they've done so far. You want to see that? Okay. So I can do it real quickly by saying clear filters. That's what I believe this means. Okay, so over here, they've got 8,915 samples. There's 6,246 location samples. And then the amount of analytes tested, and then 33 were above the screening level. So that's how come we get down to the global look at it.
So Susan, so when someone asks a question, can you repeat the question so everybody can hear and then answer it? But I want to ask you something. So the tests are it's the drinking water, it's not the groundwater. That's what we're seeing right here.
It's the drinking water that we're seeing right here. The groundwater is in the environmental side of the site. Okay, so this is just the drinking water. And Kathleen had asked how many total has been done. So I just took all the filters off. And that's how you got to find out how many locations were sampled, how many samples, blah, blah, blah. So at the FTAC, I believe Chris said there's 65% of the homes have been tested. And there's 35% left to be tested. But now we don't know what they're going to do because their long-term monitoring plan is going to change into another acronym.
Extended long-term monitoring plan.
Extended long-term monitoring plan. So actually, oh, is somebody paying attention to the chat? Is somebody asking questions there? No, they're just talking story. Okay. You want it zone?
I have a question. Can you show us how this is from the individual?
What I just did I just clear?
I don't know, did I need to?
Okay, let's see here.
Well, will you explain, how you didn't select it?
I didn't select total TPH because I wasn't sure if it would show me oil and diesel.
Will
So
you show that, like, we just, the mouse and clean out on the section?
Yes. Yeah.
okay, so you can see you can select diesel, gasoline, oil, or total petroleum hydrocarbons? If I can do one click easy, we'll see what it does. 2020. That's four, it gives me two. I seriously am pressing a four, and it's giving me a two. Yeah, I know why. Because there's nothing past March 8th, so I have to give it something that can actually find. Okay, so I started off again with December 1st, 2023. And okay, so December 1st, 2023, March. And we're just selecting total hydrocarbons, and then I'm gonna take the zone. Up here, what should come up with zone A1 right there. And now here they're giving you the totals, which is what Lacey was talking about. And they also put the screening level in as 266. Oh, we gotta find the detection. Now, so it'll just show you all the stuff that's not detected mixed in with the stuff that you want to actually see. Okay. So what you select is very important to get what you want to find. Okay? So we have 108th Street on January 17th, 24. Total petroleum hydrocarbons is 52.6. And I can scroll down, see if I can find any high ones, because I don't remember any of the addresses. But you know, they pick up elementary school had that. Now, if I go back and I select them separately. Sorry, Lisa, I can't remember how to use it.
Shift command. It is this thing, but it's.
No, that's what I was thinking. 18th Street,
Can you use the mic, Susan?
January 4th. Right there. Good, because I was just blathering too much. Okay, so we're trying to see the diesel and the oil at the same address. So you can see 132 18th Street on January 4th. And then you can see 132 18th Street on January 4th. And look towards the right. One will be a detection of oil and the other one will be a detection of diesel. Then you add 75.2 and 75.5, and that gets you 150.7. Ah, I didn't do that. Okay, so when you see my charts and you see the little square that is in red, that's me adding those two together. But if you select total, then you're not going to know the breakdown. Because I found somewhere the oil is really high and it just is surprising to me. Did I go too fast? Are we good?
See, at the bottom is that, it shows effects and then, it also shows exceedances.
Yeah,
I
but
can't see because that
the
bottom.
reason why it only shows detection right now is because we selected E2 and then we selected the date frame, so that's 12/1/23 to March 8th, 24. We selected detection because they didn't have a selection for exceedance in this area during that time frame. Okay,
It only pops up if it's an option.
right. So if I go back and take out all of the filters. Now we're gonna go to screening. It should have exceeded. See? So it always depends on where you are. The local exceedance. Yeah, okay, so here we go. E2, no surprise it's there. So those are 2022, so I'm gonna sort the date. Okay, so there's February 24. The exceedance. Then the lead. And then there's a bunch of different things, right? It always depends on your curiosity at what you want to look for. And you know, mine is, TPH. I have narrowed down 6 analytes that I'm going to be just zoning on. It's BTXMN. Benzene. Something. X. But there's 6. And that's what I was doing, just the ones that Roger had talked about a while back. So I took his 6. And then I had to come here so I didn't get to find out what happened. Tell you what I should know. But that's what I did. I tried to take those 6. Okay, Susan.
So is that 320? That exceeds?
Where?
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, Pickham Elementary was.
Yeah, that's the one that was in February that, they knew at the CRI, but they didn't tell you until 2 weeks later.
What is the date, the exact date on that?
It's February 26, 2024.
And if it's no longer, if they retested, why is this still on there?
I don't think they've made up their minds yet what they're going to do
Oh.
with the data, the database. So the best thing for them to do right now is nothing until they figure out what they're gonna do. So we want to see that, at
Oh,
least
yeah.
we have a reference point.
Can you just demonstrate for everybody how to change the analytes we're looking at? Like, say you wanted to look at not just EPH, you wanted to see if there was diamond in the water.
Yeah, so are you going to do the shift command for me? I think I have to do it with my finger. So she's gonna go to the analytes and she's gonna select. You can type in Benson.
What it gets us. It's two.
Well, it's just coming up with the table of down cedars.
That's why I got.
Let's do it from scratch. No, you can do it, just clear the filters.
Well, you have the microphone. Okay.
Lexi, can you please clear the filters? And then we're going to select 3 or 4 analytes. Not TPH, but other analytes that are of interest, that Lacey knows the names of them, and she can do the shift command with her finger, and then we'll see the results. Yeah, let's do some methyl. Arsenic. Go find your chloroform. Here it is. Okay, let's leave it at that. Okay, so we are, oh yeah, detection. It's not gonna have an exceedance if that may or may not be good, who knows?
All zones?
Yeah, might as well leave it at all.
Do we have any students?
No, none of them did, and that's from the beginning to where we are right now, so they're all detections. And they have the screening levels and then the results.
Why would the screening level of chloroform be not applicable? For NA?
Do you have that answer for me?
Chloroform is a disinfection byproduct. So it doesn't have a current, maximum contaminant. in it. Yeah, so that's why it's in it, not out.
Should anybody be ingesting it?
Well, at that level, it's so low, it occurs naturally.
Oh, I see.
So the idea is to watch how much chlorine, like you have 2 things happening. It's chlorine and any kind of natural, what is called photoorganic carbon that's present in water. So it occurs naturally, TOC, or photoorganic carbon occurs naturally. Of course, you add chlorine, we add chlorine, so we do keep up a certain amount of disinfection byproduct. The idea is to make sure that that level doesn't get out of control.
How many products are there?
There's basically 4 different types that EPA regulates, and they regulate it as what is called total trihalomethanes. So there's 4 basic kinds. There's other types, acetic acid types, that's also regulated. So in total, there's 4 trihalomethanes, and the other types is about 8 of them. And they are regulated as a total.
I was gonna write down your 4, so I got acetic acid, what else?
Chlorine.
I got it.
Oh, okay, never mind, he doesn't have it memorized, so
Right.
this is just one,
I look at it as a total.
yeah.
So basically, the maximum contaminant limit is 100 micrograms per liter is the total. You can have, if you have less than 60, then your monitoring requirements get reduced. Us, we're down to like 20. I'm in low across.
Questions? Any questions online?
I have a question. So, the Department of Health uses these numbers. Is that
I
correct?
can't swear to it. I have no answer for you, I don't know what they do.
From my understanding, they rely on the Navy testing. That's what they've said multiple times.
I don't have that answer.
Okay,
I would have to say, have Kathleen here and say, yes, we use this. Because remember, they have their own lab. But I don't know. I have no idea. I'm not gonna lie, I have no idea.
can you repeat the question in line?
So Leilani wants to know if the Department of Health uses the Unsafe Waters website to follow the, what was that of it?
They use these tests for their, they were telling us they don't do their own testing. That's true.
They have their separate labs. Yes, Irwin.
I can tell you what we do. Okay, so a lot of these things that you're seeing, all the arsenic, antimony, all of that, is part of, the standard drinking water testing methods for things like metals. And so we do them as well, we do the metals also. So go through the analysis, take all the test results and submit it to the Department of Health as part of our compliance monitoring requirements. So the Navy is doing the same thing. They are a water system. They're bound by all of the drinking water standards. So all of this testing here is in addition to and probably above what the Navy is doing. This is part of Red Hill monitoring. The data can be used for drinking water testing, but I think this is exclusive only to the long-term monitoring that we're doing as associated with Red Hill.
So when he was talking about long-term monitoring, in the top right-hand side, you'll see zone and locations. And then you can actually select a long-term monitoring, I just did it. We'll see what happens. So it just comes up with 47 samples. And this was done January 18th, 2024. Okay, so it was month of January. January 15th through the 24th. And they did 47 samples. And you had already selected the analytes, so all you're going to see are the arsenic and scroll nicely. That's all arsenic, but it's only going to find the ones that we selected. So if we take the analyte. Oh. There's a shortcut. Okay. So now it's going to be looking at the long-term monitoring zone A1. Now there's 66 samples because I selected all of the analytes. But it said 0 detected above the screening level. So there was 66 locations and they took 80 samples. And if you see nothing here, that just means that nothing went over the screening level. And that's where it kind of has, everybody has a question in their mind. Because of 266 being the screening level, now we start looking at these things and we're, you know, my mind goes, do I have to double check all of this stuff? You know, but I'm gonna trust it because I don't have time to do that. But you can see the arsenic is 10 and the reported result was 0.58. So it tells you that it detected it, but it wasn't an exceedance, because if it was an exceedance, then it would be yellow.
I have a question that sorry if you're gonna repeat, but I was wondering, could you maybe like write the top 5 elements that we should look for?
Oh, I don't have it memorized, but I told you the acronym, BTEXMN, but I don't remember. It starts with benzene, toluene, some others.
And what's like the average of normal?
What is the average of normal what?
The average, the number wise, like what should you look for? Like if you, like, for example, arsenic comes up and it's a screening level, like what is the normal numbers that are?
Okay, for arsenic, the screening level is 10. And this particular place, Waikiki Port, their result on January 15th for arsenic came up with 0.58. So it's telling you that they saw it, but it's not anything that they have to do about it because it's way below 10.
But like, what's like the cutoff point, because since we don't trust them, like they're not.
Oh, we have to,
No,
because if,
like, what's a normal number for arsenic, for example? And
okay, she's asking what the normal number for arsenic is. And they have taken the screening levels from the EPA. They took it from EPA, right? The screening levels are from EPA. So they have to take the screening levels from a regulator. It's EPA or it's going to be the Department of Health. So what you see here, the 10 is going to be the highest. But now if you go back and do your own research and you find out that it should be 5 or 0, whatever, there's some things that's going to be in your water. But you want to know, what do I want in my water? But it's never going to be completely clean.
Let me try it this way. Okay, the normal level, back to your question on the normal level for the arsenic. Okay, so what's showing here, the arsenic, the 10, is actually the regulatory standard. So that's the regulatory limit. So the regulations say you cannot have more than 10 micrograms per liter of arsenic in your drinking water. If you do, it's a violation of the rule. So that's what the 10 means. What's normal for Joint Base Pearl Harbor? You'd actually have to go and take a look at all of these results, list them all, and kind of see where they are. Yeah, and then look at them over time. If you see this kind of detection, look at them over time, and then that will give you some idea as to what the nominal number or that you can expect with this water system.
Yeah.
Just remember, this is a very old water system, so it's not uncommon to see these kinds of detections. But to understand, you know, what is quote unquote normal, you actually have to assemble all of the results over time and see what the numbers are. And that'll give you an idea of what you can expect. But the main thing is you want to be below this level. You want to be below the 10. And of course, the lower you are, the better you are.
Erwin, would you trust these numbers? These screening levels?
Well, the screening levels are based on the regulatory standards, right? So we're bound by those standards just as well as the Navy are because we're a drinking water system. So this 10, for example, for arsenic applies to us just as much as it applies to any drinking water system in the United States. Because this is the actual drinking water standard. Okay? So the idea is you want to make sure you're below this. The lower you are, the better.
Walter has a question.
If I look at arsenic, for example, and I'm not worried about the legal system, I go to their website, the Board of Water Supply website, and I you put your address in there, and then you'll get the water quality report for your. So I guess I look at it every year. Is it every year? Every year?
do it annually.
Yeah, so I pull it up and I look at it. So let's say every year for the last 5 years, it was 0.1. So for me, that's what's my average norm, 0.1. I'm not gonna go by that speed, right? So I go by their test data. They give it to us. So if you look at your test data, it looks almost like this, pretty much, right? And there's all the headlights. And then the levels they got.
There's a question back here.
I was just curious if there is a way to, do they offer a way to download data?
Do they offer a way to download?
Do they offer a way to download the data in the Navy? This is their way.
No, she wants to do it at home. right?
I was just like, for example, if you're like, a certain section, you're like, oh, you want.
Yeah.
Yes, you have,
The name,
okay, you have to create an Excel spreadsheet. And then pretend that you wanted this data. Let's see if I can get my
I think
fingers
the
to work.
answer is no, Susan, yeah, because you have to create your own Excel,
You have to create your own.
not down there. Yeah.
So, and you have to be able to select it, so you have to hit control, 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 so you select them all. And then you copy, and then you paste, and then you do whatever you want with it.
We have requested that it's downloadable. I don't know if they answered that question. Well, our spreadsheet.
No.
No,
They did answer, they said that it's portable, but when you-
I was told that we can't give you all the keys, Susan.
So that could be more minutes.
Okay, so there's other things that can be done with it, but only the Navy has the control of the, I call them slicers. But what they are their different parameters. So when we were at the FTAC, you saw us show us all the detections below 150 and all the detections above 150. But we cannot do it here. So there's probably a lot more that you can do at the website, but these are the basics. You know, but don't start slow. You know, and practice with just small pieces until you get it, because you always have to watch your different parameters. So the weight range, the screening level, the name of the analytes. If you have a house address, or that's what I was gonna actually do, not tonight, but I was just gonna select Ohana Nui, because it's a circle somewhere. But I think it's in D2. So I know it's a circle, and I know enough about the pipelines to say, were there any dead ends or cross connections? No. There's dead ends and there's something else. And so if you see if I find out in Ohana Nui circle that the addresses are coming up with this TPH that I've been finding, it's just another way of me looking at the data, because I've been looking at it for so long. I'm bored with what I'm doing right now, so.
Can you just demonstrate how to find Ohana Nui? Maybe to, for people, hold on.
Your fingers. I need your fingers.
Oh.
I want to actually do it. So she's gonna type, maybe I can. OHAN. It's coming up with anything that has Ohana in it. See that circle? That is the circle of concern for me. And it's only because I've been looking at the data for so long that I know certain streets that I wanted wasn't at. Because if you're on a street and you're on the even side and the odd side, and both sides or next door neighbors are starting to get everything happening. That's why I was talking about creating a map with push pins. But see what she's doing right now? She's getting all the addresses on Ohana Nui Circle, and there's a lot of them. But it's showing you. And then you're gonna have to hit detect. Oh, we got
That's
that.
good enough.
It's great. I really appreciate what she's doing, because I looked at that. Okay.
There's a quick. I've been talking about Why is it not?
Oh.
Do I have to, no, you don't have to do that. It's not popping up. That's straight, okay, so this should be, sure,
We can see them.
yeah. Going on there, screenshot that.
Okay. I guess they didn't want me to do that.
Yeah, wow, okay, let's try different street. Becky. Know how to spell that?
Because there's no sense in searching on an address because a long-term monitoring plan is basically only gonna hit one address.
It's gonna keep popping up with all. I know it. This is really suspicious. Okay, wait, well, let's. Yeah, clear. There you go. Oh, wait, let's try, what be different? Well, that's not, what I do.
Can you do Becky? D. Start with D.
D.
D as in David. Oh, D. Does anybody know any addresses?
I do.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Second.
Wow. It's showing all the screen. See?
Yeah, well, it should be doing that for the other street.
Yeah,
It's not doing it for Ohana.
yeah, well. It's because everybody's watching us. Yeah, you can go home and it's gonna work. That's the Murphy's Law. She just selects the section.
Hey, Lonnie.
And the screen.
Hey, Lonnie.
I just-
My laptop and it's showing
Okay,
up, so
let's-
maybe she
okay,
had to
there it
refresh.
is. There's a screen. Yep, same address, same day. That's what you gotta make sure. Same address, same date. Quick. I've heard your questions.
A bunch of those people, they are in like the Pearl City area by Sandstone and people. And I just wanted to know,
Manana?
like in that area by Sandstone, like the building that's in towers.
They haven't put it in here yet.
Okay, and then I think like supposedly they're not on the Navy, but there's kind of like gray area, like they found out they were, then they're not, and they were.
Just don't believe any of that. They are.
They are.
But they're not posted.
There was a date in 2021, I believe it was, let's say November 17th. They had to disconnect Manana, hook them up to Board of Water Supply because they had to do something to fix. Board of Water Supply, when they were done, took their pipeline back and they were back on Manana. Do not quote me, but I'm almost sure of this.
Yeah.
It's the story of the Navy and it goes back and forth, but the truth is,
Yeah.
is the truth. And it's a good question if you go to the chat and come to one of the CRI meetings and just put them on the spot and say, ask the same question. See what kind of answer you get.
So we have maybe time for one or two more questions.
I'm gonna
At
put
the
my
most, two more.
email address.
When you talked about the 80,000 series, why did you? Was there, is there another method you put it in? There's one. That was quite good.
I can hear them.
Google it. This Walter just made this.
Send me an email. In the subject line, you can put CRI or Safe Waters. Or else I'll just skip over you. Okay.
Arwen, what should we be asking the Navy to do?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for the questions.
Are you done with your presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I now feel confident enough to use that website. Thank you so much, Susan. And then we'll have, just some, if anybody has questions for Erwin in terms of water quality, TPH, any confusion you have about, what TPH is it naturally found in our water? Is it indigenous to Hawaii? Families are still getting sick, so we wanna, we wanna understand what's going on, but thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll get to Marty's question later. I guess what should be asking the Navy to do with water testing and sampling, yeah? Okay, so let's start with TPH. TPH stands for total petroleum hydrocarbon. It is actually a name given to a family of chemicals, hydrocarbon chemicals, that's made up of carbon and hydrogen that comes from crude oil. So if you take crude oil and you run it through the refining process, you get different kinds of petroleum products. Diesel fuel, gasoline, you'll get some heavy tar products, different kinds of petroleum products. Now in Hawaii, TPH or petroleum is not indigenous to Hawaii. Right? So you don't expect to find it here. In fact, you're not going to find it here. You know, the geology is not of a type old enough to be able to produce any kind of crude oil in the ground. So this notion that it is something that occurs naturally is not true. So you don't expect to find it, number one. Number two, we are monitoring the Red Hill facility. The Red Hill facility was storing petroleum products since the 1940s, and it's been leaking these products. Now it stands to reason that the petroleum is going to come from the material that was stored there from the 1940s. Yeah, and so if you sample the groundwater and you find the petroleum that's coming from the leaking from the tanks that was storing the thing to begin with. So this idea or this notion that it's not coming from the tanks and it's something that's there naturally technically makes no sense to me. Now, there's this idea that somehow chlorine during the sampling has some kind of impact on these TPH results. And I think the Navy or the theory is that chlorine is imparting or causing these TPH results to come up, right? Okay, a couple of things. I think that's what they're saying, right? Yeah. Couple of things, okay? The Navy is sampling groundwater. Groundwater has no chlorine in it, but yet it's detecting TPH. Where the heck did that thing come from? All right, number one. Number two, when we sample when we collect water samples, there is a preservative in that sample. And it's specifically there to chlorinate the water sample. Okay, so it's purposely preserves the sample and it purposely dechlorinates it so that it doesn't create any kind of particular interference. But as with all analytical methods, Anytime you have a brand new analytical testing method, it goes through an interlaboratory study where everything associated with that method is analyzed, it is evaluated in huge detail, including how the sample is collected. Now, one of the things that's most important with any kind of testing is the collection of the sample. If there's anything that's most important, is the collection of the sample. If you collect the sample in a way that changes the sample, then you have to identify what that is and make sure that it's addressed. And so all laboratory studies do that. And you evaluate everything from the time you wash the glassware, collect the sample, do the analysis, and do all of the quality controls to check to make sure that the analysis result is valid. Yeah. So this notion that somehow all of a sudden, chlorine is somehow creating these TPH results kind of doesn't make any sense to me. And if it's somehow interacting with the chlorine, TPH is interacting with the chlorine. Think about it. You have a petroleum hydrocarbon, which is a hydrocarbon. If it reacts with the chlorine, you're going to get a chlorinated hydrocarbon, right? Well, guess what? The test results that you just saw there shows a non-detect. Well, then where does it go? Not number one. Number two, in nature, everything, you require, when you take one kind of molecule like a hydrocarbon and you react it with chlorine, it requires energy. Okay? Energy in the form of light or some kind of heat or some kind of energy. Now, most times it's light energy. It's very dark inside of a pipeline. Where the light comes from. And then on top of that, you're not detecting any chlorinated hydrocarbons because there's actual results seeing this. So again, this notion that it's being impacted, it just quickly doesn't make any sense. So one of the questions I would ask is, all right, Navy, do you think the chlorine is impacting the analysis? Show me the actual chemical reaction that is occurring. Show us the chemical reaction. Just like when you take hydrogen, you react with oxygen, you get water, plus a lot of heat. Show me that chemical reaction that's producing that. There's a question back.
Question, a couple of other questions that I think we have to make. We have to talk about this today. As Erwin just pointed out, the lab do this testing, then to look at the integrity of the test. That's the Navy did their laboratory do that. They do this testing, because if they had, they would have discovered they're having this problem. And 8,000 samples would not be quote unusable. So this is why I said earlier, when they think, oh, well, these were designed for drinking water. That is gas and light language. That is language that they're using to be dismissive, like the Jedi mind, but there's nothing to see. That's basically what they're saying, but Erwin and I said, we use these, but this is what we do, and this is how we test things and how we qualify it. So those are the kinds of questions you can be asking the Navy, because we'll be curious to see what they.
Can you talk about quenching?
Susan asked me about quenching. Quenching is just simply the practice of neutralizing. So you're just calming it down or neutralizing or preserving the water sample. I have no idea what you're quenching here. Yes. Yeah, and then of course this notion, okay, the other notion is that you have this valid and unvalidated results.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Okay, that's the great one, right? Valid and unvalidated results. So in other words, they've been using a test method that's industry accepted, 80-15, to do TPH testing. And from the time they've been doing this monitoring, only from December or November of 2021, when the incident happened, up until the present, all of these 8,000 or so samples is not valid. Okay? Well, several questions. What laboratory would produce unvalidated results in the first place? If you're a laboratory and you produce unvalidated results, you are opening yourself up to liability. Think of a medical laboratory that you go and have your blood tests and measure how much, glucose you have in your blood. And that's an unvalidated test result, and your doctor is prescribing medication based on that unvalidated test result. I'd be very concerned about that. Okay, so that's one question. What laboratory would do that? Number one. Number two, as the purchaser of the laboratory service, you have an obligation to check your laboratory that you're using. We do that all the time. And I go out and contract a laboratory. All right, I do an audit on that laboratory. We examine all of their records, all of their quality control, everything before they accept any samples from us. And then I put on certain requirements that they have to demonstrate capability to us. They don't, I terminate them. And I've done it in the past. And so you as the purchaser have to make sure that you can evaluate that laboratory that does that work for you. Yeah.
What if it's 3 different laboratories doing unvalidated results? If we like them.
Yeah, the Navy has that historically. Yeah, they've used different laboratories and they have different minimum reporting limits. And that's something that I've always been somewhat concerned about. If you look at all their records from 2005 up until the present, there are many areas where their detection limits change or their minimum reporting limits change. That's not healthy from a monitoring standpoint. From a long-term monitoring standpoint, you have something going up and down, up and down. It's difficult to understand any trends. They understand what is actually there and not there. So, again, that has something to do with making sure that all of these laboratories be able to form the same way with the same analysis. Because if you look at it, it's a test method. Every laboratory should be able to take that test method and reproduce the same result in the same quality. That's just common sense. It just stands to reason. The laboratory cannot do that. I would go and look for a different laboratory. Or I start asking some questions about this. I think I saw, go ahead. Sue.
So the other thing that Chris was saying, the Navy contractor, was that I said, well, he kept saying that, well, the labs are okay, we just have to do some sort of verification or something after the fact. And I said, well, who would do that? Oh, that would be me. So I said, why can't the lab do the proper procedure to begin with? But he wants to somehow take the data and manipulate it, I think. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
Shouldn't the lab do the lab's work?
Right. As like for us, okay. When I send a sample to our laboratory, we go through our validation process. We accept their test results, and then they do an analysis and they give us a report, right? I'll look at the report and I accept that value. Now, obviously, if I see a test result that's unusual, I'll go back to the laboratory, or I'll take another water sample to confirm what I saw. And if I'm not satisfied, I'll take a second water sample. I've gone and taken 5 extra samples just to be sure about what we've seen. Now that's called confirmation. But to actually take a laboratory report, to get the result, and I take this result and I change it someplace and they give it to you, that's called manipulation. I can go to prison for doing that. That's ethically unacceptable to do things like that.
So would the question be, why did they not go back to the labs, which were going to get the list of?
If you have a question about the laboratory report and the result, okay, you should go back to the laboratory, number one, and ask them about it. Have them prove to you that it was done correctly. Check all of the quality control reports that's in that report. But more importantly, you should go take another sample. Take another sample and check it. And if you're not, and if after that second sample, you're still not sure, take a third. There's nothing from precluding you from taking more samples.
The other thing is, I think if we know who the labs are, it's like, you know, the Navy's trashing, we know about it. Right?
Yeah.
You know,
Eurofins, SPG, and something else.
Yeah. Now, Eurofins is and it is a very large laboratory firm in the United States. They began originally as a pharmaceutical laboratory doing pharmaceutical testing. They have since diversified and got into environmental testing and have pretty much taken over a lot of the small environmental laboratories. We have we use the Eurofins laboratory in Pomona, California ourselves. So we've used them for many years. They've gone through different name changes, but we have used the same laboratory since the mid-1990s. So we have a good history with them. And they do have other laboratories within the Eurofins organization. They have one in Lancaster, they have one in Seattle, they have different places. They all do different kinds of testing.
I have another question about the lab testing. At the UNPAC meeting, they had mentioned lipids. They had a theory that lipids in lab bloods were causing these false positives. Is that something you've ever encountered?
The question was, I guess, contaminants in lab gloves that could infect the sample. Well, first of all, there's only very specific kinds of gloves that you should be using for when you're collecting the sample and when you're doing the analysis. And those are nitrile gloves. But to understand whether or to determine whether the gloves or anything that you're using has an effect on the analysis, that's why you do quality control. You do method blanks, you do method spikes, you do other types of tests to check all of the materials that you are using as part of the sample collection and the analysis to see if there are any either interferences or other kinds of extraneous contaminants that you're picking up. If you're postulating that that's happening, then you really don't know. You should go and check. Yeah, and of course that comes down to when you actually get that laboratory result. You see a result that's unusual, you question it. You go back and you take a look at all of the quality control results and examine everything to make sure everything is, and if something is not right or not correct, then you redo the analysis.
Are you on the swarm team? Oh, I'm sorry. No, go ahead. Are you on the swarm team or?
Am I on the swarm team? No.
Did you guys attend any of the meetings or anything like that?
I went to the FPAC and I think the last FPAC meeting, we listened to, yeah, no.
Super duper expert meetings.
One two comments, like related to common sense kind of question. How come they don't just take like your guys' results? Why did it sit on them doing it their way? It's the results that are pretty much secure that we can trust. One, and then two, as far as like the politics, how is it that where we're at now, 2 years later, that at the CRI meeting, you can have the regulator not regulate until we're waiting for the Navy, and Navy saying we're waiting for the regulator. And then the DHS, who's in the middle, is supposed to be advocating for our health. They're just like working together to not work for the public. You know what I mean? This is
I think we've answered your question.
Yeah.
but like why? Like how
I have no idea.
Oh, welcome to our world. This is what you've been dealing with for over 10 years.
and how come they don't just take your guys' like results?
I have no idea. I mean, for us, consistency is important, and accuracy and precision is important. Our laboratories, they actually go through 2 different accreditation processes. One is the International Standards Organization, the other one is the National Environmental Laboratory Accreditation Program. These programs are designed to ensure the laboratory performs and delivers accurate test results.
Who makes the decision? Is it the EPA, the DOH, or the Navy that just one of them has to say that, hey, y'all will take your all knowledge and results?
If you're doing drinking water testing, for example, you have to be certified under EPA rules to do drinking water testing. That's about the only one that I'm aware of that there's an actual certification requirement. Okay, and that certification that review is done by a state regulatory agency most often, but that doesn't preclude them from the laboratory going to an extra step. And there are other organizations out there, third-party organizations out there that evaluate all laboratories and ensure that they provide accurate test results. And so the Eurofins lab that we use goes through that.
So what time is, who can make the call to like use your guys' data?
I have no idea.
Could you repeat the two lab accreditations that,
But one is ISO, International Organization of Standards, ISO. There's a specific method for that, or criteria called 17025. It's specifically for laboratory testing and accuracy. The other one is called NELAB, National Environmental Laboratory Accreditation Conference. Under that conference, there's a program that laboratories can go through this accreditation, get actual special accreditation, and that proves that they can generate accurate results. So our laboratory goes through it.
would that be a question as the Navy? Have your labs gone through?
What you should ask them is, did your laboratories go through ISO 17025 and NELAC accreditation?
1725, and then it'll be.
17025.
Can I put one more question and then we gotta get to the next speaker? Oh, Susan, Paola?
Has everybody had a chance to look at the EPAC presentation from the Navy? Anybody? Okay. So just remember that EPAC presentation only pertained to TPH. So everything that they were trying to discredit in the sampling and in the testing only had to do with TPH. So that's another thing that's about that.
You know, one of the things that the Navy is saying, one of the things I've heard them say is that we don't know why we're getting these TPH results. And it could be something else, but we don't know what it is. Okay, well, guess what? If
Yeah,
you-
it's an allergy.
yeah, but okay. When I heard that, I thought to myself, if you don't know what it is, you gotta tell people don't drink the water.
Yes, exactly.
Especially if you don't know what it is. Don't drink the water.
Person here, 3 years.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Erwin, thank you so much. Can we give Erwin a round of applause? Anything so far is just been confirming, what, we know. But I think having that confirmation from someone, from other people is really important, for us. So, we're gonna go to the next speaker. And he's online, and I'll have Walter introduce him.
You're gonna hang around, yeah?
Oh, yeah, hang around, Erwin. Don't go.
Yeah, because I'm interested in what you think of his.
Hello,
opinion
can you hear me
on the
now?
test methods and the mixture.
Hello, can you hear me now? Hello,
Yeah, our next guest is Dr. Stephen Havlicek. He spent the last 50-something years doing this kind of work, working in laboratory procedures. He actually with the part
which way they take this kind of work.
Hello, folks, can you hear me? Woo-hoo.
So the PWD and the preliminary,
You need to do Alt A or something.
Okay, can you hear me? I did press Alt A like you said.
Okay. Okay, Stephen. So he has different opinions, but he has expressed in the 2021 stages. So, when this government, if you guys have any questions, and he was interested in what Aaron thought, some of his theories and his opinions. Okay, Stephen, you're on. I think you're muted.
Does he know how to share his slides?
Hello,
Okay.
hello, hello.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Stephen, start.
Hello, hey, Stephen.
Just got muted again. Oh, he's unmuted. And he muted again.
Did it do me any good this time? I really would like to speak.
Can they hear you?
I don't think they can hear me.
We can hear you.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Hooray, hooray. Okay.
Go.
Now I've actually done something strange. I've read the entire 271 premise plumbing report, and I have been able to deduce some things about from that. The very first thing I need to tell all of you folks is that how petroleum hydrocarbons behave when spilled into the environment and contact water. It turns out that water solubility is the governing factor. In other words, is the hydrocarbon that you're looking for soluble in water? And if so, how soluble is it? Because that governs whether it will migrate or not. So if you place a fuel in contact with water and that fuel contains some soluble hydrocarbons, they will go into the water. And once in the water phase, as long as you still have the oil phase, the JP5 or whatever it is, in contact with that water, it would prefer, even these soluble hydrocarbons would prefer by about 100 to 1 to stay with the fuel. But even with a 100-fold reduction, for example, the solubility of benzene, which is a regulated compound, 6 carbons, that solubility is 0.17%. So when you reduce it by 100-fold, the solubility is still around 10 or so parts per million. And the regulated level published by EPA for drinking water and drinking water sources is 5 parts per billion. So it's 1,000 times what you would expect to be 1,000 times higher. And that's true of what they call the BTEX compounds, especially benzene, ethylbenzene, toluene, xylenes. They're all more soluble in water than most petroleum hydrocarbons. So when you spill JP5 or even something heavier, the only part that goes into the water is in the gasoline range. So if you want to know how much TPH is in the water, you need to compare your results with a gasoline standard and develop an answer. Now, the methods that were used for this project, which is 88015, will do that. And I have examined a number of their chromatograms, which are the instrument outputs. And overall, I find that the reason they are not reporting any TPH is that they're looking in the wrong place. They're not looking for gasoline range. They're not comparing their results with a standard of gasoline. And nevertheless, out of all the chromatograms that I have looked at, have shown me enough to conclude, reluctantly, of course, that the Navy reports are basically incorrect because they're not looking in the right place. They're using the right method, but they're not looking in the right place. They're not comparing it with the right standard. The rule to remember, and it's pretty simple, is that only that tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of JP5 or other heavy fuel like oil, which will dissolve in water, will be able to move in the environment, and that the water solubility governs the movement, and that if the results are properly compared with a gasoline standard, you will have results. And if the specific regulated compounds, the BTEX, are reported, they will be found, and based only on my experience, they will be found at levels above action levels. And the problem with the Navy report that causes their data to be incorrectly reported is that they saw, and I have looked at the chromatograms, they saw the pattern in the gasoline range and said, we didn't spill any gasoline, so this must be an artifact. And an artifact is something not present in the sample that produces an appearance. Well, it turns out they ran a couple of standards, JP5 and I think diesel or some other heavier hydrocarbon, and they published them, and I have the chromatograms, and if those were to be thrown up on the screen for me by whomsoever is helping me, you can see that in the area which I have circled for the standards, there is no background. All right, now we're going places. All right, all right.
No, that's not.
There's a lot to be covered here, and what I want you to remember is that it's water solubility that governs how the fuel gets into the water, and that it can get in there at many times, maybe as much as 1,000 times higher than action levels. And when it becomes separated from the fuel, then it's free to migrate as that. And another little aside is the Navy has indicated that they did not spill any or have present any gasoline. Well, there's something they do use and have used certainly in the past called avgas. That's aviation gasoline. It is used for prop planes and helicopters. And in the TV presentations, I noticed that there were prop planes and helicopters on site. And avgas, to this very day, to the best of my knowledge, contains gasoline, of course, and lead, and the BTEX compounds in abundance. And this was overlooked, apparently, by those who prepared the report for the Navy. But the basic things that's missing from this premise plumbing report, which the Navy did release, is that they're looking in the wrong place. They're looking for the wrong thing. And they even had gasoline on site. I'm sure they probably used motor fuel gasoline too, especially over the 80 years that the site was in progress. So that given, I think if we throw up the overheads that I prepared for this talk, we will see that we have a couple of premises that were overlooked. And I had the opportunity early on to tell the Navy through the Red Hill Group, which I'm a member of, through the Red Hill Group, that they should expect to see gasoline range hydrocarbons no matter what they spilled, and they should use gasoline as a standard. Now, somehow those who were doing the analysis either did not see those warnings or they did not consider them important, because they have not lied to you folks. If they didn't spill, like for example, the recent spill, they know they spilled JP5. And then the patterns they see do not look like JP5. So they said artifact, but they were not aware that actually they should have expected to see gasoline range hydrocarbons. I have served as an expert witness. I see someone questioned that in the data. The data indicated that, let's stick to the question. Yeah, I have served as an expert witness over 1,000 times. Told the Red Hill Group very early that this is very important, that breathing was a connection to the symptoms. I had a meeting with the Center for Disease Control, one of their top scientists, and he and I agreed that the connection between the release and the production of symptoms was due to breathing. That was the connection, and that therefore I recommended air testing very early. And the CDC agreed with me, and I communicated that. The plan in the premise plumbing discounts the need for air testing, says you get higher exposure pumping gas. Well, that's true, but you're only pumping gas for 1 or 2 minutes, and then you go home. But when you go home, if it's in the air in your home, you're exposed 24/7. So that comment is at least misleading. They need to do air testing, and to the best of my knowledge, they never did any that was valid. I believe they did one set of tests, and it was invalid because they mishandled the sampling equipment. And again, I get that by reading between the lines. I have personally done hands-on testing of air and water for environmental samples throughout my career, and the first time I ever did any looking over of TPH results is over 50 years ago. So the thought about pumping gas is is misleading at the least, because if it's in your home, you're exposed 24/7. And furthermore, if you have an aerator on your sink, that has two implications to the projects here. One is that sampling with the aerator on is an invalid sample, because the aerator is designed to blow away the volatile contents, which of course is what you're looking for when you're doing an air testing, or even a dissolved hydrocarbons in the water for 8015. So you mustn't sample that way. And I'm not sure that the sampling methods used, because they were not described, were proper. You're supposed to sample into a septum sealed vial, and you're supposed to avoid aerators and shower heads. So they never did valid air testing, and they have indicated they don't plan to. Now, the exposure route to memorize is fuel to water, governed by solubility, water to air, and air to the sick person. And that all adds up, and it is consistent with some of the chromatograms which I observed that were in the report. Like I said, it's 271 pages, and its description is plumbing premise plumbing. You would not, and furthermore, I would add, no one from the military sent me that. It was sent by someone else, and I got it only 10 days ago, and nevertheless, I went through it, and I'm able to form conclusions based on it. And the conclusion that is most important is that the exposure route, what caused people to get feeling bad, was the fuel partitioned it to the water. The stuff that went in the water was primarily in the gasoline range, and they didn't look there. And then it went from the water to the air, and then from the air to making the person sick. And that agrees with reported user complaints, and it agrees with the ultimate conclusion mutually formed by one of the Center for Disease Control's top scientists and myself, and relayed to the military through the U of H program. And they do have we do have the capability at that program, if the Navy, chuckle, would authorize the purchase of the necessary equipment. And that's the bottom line. And I would like to simply take questions. You can play Stump the Doc. I want to know what's bothering you about this. Anyone could jump in with a question, and I will attempt to answer it. And
Hey, Steve, let me,
this vast experience, but I will say, I don't know absolutely everything. But if I don't know it, I'll tell you, and I'll look it up.
okay, Susan has a question.
Can you hear me?
Could you repeat the question? I didn't hear it clearly.
Can you,
Asking
On the diesel and the oil.
You're only talking
about the gasoline, what about diesel and oil? Diesel and oil.
If you could write the question in the chat, maybe I would answer it, because I'm having trouble.
Stephen, the question is, what is your comment about the diesel and the oil in the water?
When diesel and oil are contacted with water, only those hydrocarbons with some solubility in the water will go into the water. And those components will be placed in the water at levels which are well above, I believe I would estimate 1,000 times above regulated limits. And the problem with the premise plumbing report, which was reported to through television, I saw it on my TV, that the overall conclusion of that report was that there aren't any significant petroleum hydrocarbons in the water, and therefore the water is okay to drink. And that conclusion, based on research which I personally did about 30 years ago, and again repeated about 13 years ago as a double-blind study for EPA, indicates that, as I've said, the only hydrocarbon components that have significant water solubility will go into the water, and that nevertheless, the levels you would expect in the water would be higher than those regulated. And that the method they did use showed those levels in their chromatograms, which I examined such as they presented, and where they were written off as artifacts. Now, if they had been artifacts, then when they ran the two standards they ran, one of which was JP5, the portion of the chromatogram that contained the gasoline range hydrocarbons would have shown the same spikes, that the same patterns that were exhibited by the samples. But the key thing there I pulled out of that was they didn't, because they took their solvent, and which was not contaminated with artifacts, and placed the JP5 in it and ran it, and the gasoline range hydrocarbons were clean, as you would expect. And therefore, those chromatograms, which are labeled by them as JP5, and I think the other was a standard. And I presented 5 of these for your inspection, which you can do now or later. And in the ones for the standards, no gasoline range hydrocarbons, so no artifacts. And in the samples, plenty of gasoline range hydrocarbons. Therefore, samples contained gasoline range hydrocarbons as expected, based on this research that I did many years ago. And I did the research to give my company, which was engaged in environmental analysis and petroleum analysis, to give my company an advantage technically over the competition. And because in order to do the results that way and that examine them that thoroughly cost more money, of course. And if I couldn't convince anyone that it had an advantage for them, they would never have bought my my style of analysis.
Okay, Steve, let me see if there's any other questions. Are there?
Yeah, let's go for another question, please.
Okay, I think I'm gonna mute you for now. I'll let you know if there's any other questions, okay?
Well, I'd be amazed if there aren't. I'd be disturbed, because I'm here to answer questions. And as I said, I've done this before. I've done this in the face of hostile questioning from expert witnesses that opposed those that I did the analysis for. Some of those projects were pretty significant. If any of you have viewed the movie Erin Brockovich, I did the original sampling for both sides. You know, that was long ago. And the only reason both sides hired me was that they, at that time, they wanted,
Stephen,
yeah, they wanted to know what was going on. And
Stephen, we got a question. Stephen, we got a question. Can you explain weathering?
I'm ready for another question. I'd love to have one.
Okay, can you explain weathering?
Weathering, yes, okay. When petroleum hydrocarbons are released from the environment and they are into the environment, say into the groundwater, when they become separated from the oil or the gasoline itself, whatever was released, they migrate freely with the movement of the groundwater. And as such, they would encounter microbiology in the soil, which would act to weather the hydrocarbons and reduce their concentrations. And one of the problems with this weathering process is that it's quite slow in spite of what you would believe from what they tell you about holding times for samples. And so I had examined, for example, an 80-year-old tank rupture from 1910, where they were barely using gasoline. They put it in a wooden tank, and the wooden tank ruptured over time. And 50 years later, after that, I think it was 1960, 1970, I analyzed the samples from it, and it was still full of BTEX, although it had been weathered. And the weathering just happens to be a slow process, but it's a real process. And in some cases, if the migration is very slow of the groundwater, and in the area where it's spilled, it's not being used for drinking water purposes, it's okay to leave the site alone and let it remediate itself, but it takes a long, long time.
Okay, we have another question. Hang on. I think, did Alima have a question?
Yes, I did have a question. Thank you so much. And Stephen, I wanted to thank you for being here today. I think the reason why probably a lot of folks are quiet is I think we're stunned. I don't know if I can really speak for anyone else, but I myself am stunned to hear that we potentially have been misled by the United States government, but maybe I'm not surprised. So it's great that my question comes on the heels of this weathering question, because my question has to do with half-life. And the reason why I asked this question is that two legislative sessions ago, the some team from the U.S. Geological Survey came out and had a discussion with our elected officials, and basically the gist of that discussion was that was about half-life and some sort of incident that occurred in Bemidji, Minnesota. And so basically, I think what they were trying to say to our elected officials was that it's really not going to be that bad. It's going to be bad for some period of time, and this is what you might anticipate over the lifespan of this event. But we have remediation techniques, and we can do this and that or whatever. So if you could speak to that half-life sort of thing, and what, I don't want you to speculate too much, but what you think maybe the U.S. Geological Survey might be doing, coming out to Hawaii to talk to elected officials about this TPH issue and half-life in the soil and water. Mahalo.
Thank you very much for asking that question. It's a question I often hear, and it's a concept that is easily misunderstood and sometimes at risk to large populations of consumers of water supply. Half-life refers to the time required for half of the pollutant concentration to be destroyed by natural conditions or by remediation conditions, but mostly natural conditions. And so if, for example, we're at a site and we have a chemical that's been released and it's in the groundwater or the source water, and the half-life is 1 week. So after 1 week, if the concentration was 100 ppb, for example, then after 1 week, it'll be 50. And where the public and the users of the half-life concept make an error most often is that then they say, oh, okay, we'll wait 1 more week and then the other half will be destroyed. That's not how it works. The 100 became 50, and in another week, that 50 will become 25, not 0. And so this progression goes on and on. And I know of a very specific case where the city of San Francisco was put in danger because this concept was not understood by the regulators. And they said the water would be okay to drink. The half-life indicated when properly applied, like the 50 became 25, the 25 became 12 and a half, et cetera, it was still above dangerous levels. The only thing that saved them from poisoning themselves was the fact that the normal water treatment techniques, because this particular compound was reactive with chlorine, they treated the water with chlorine, destroyed it that way. But otherwise, they would have exposed the whole population of San Francisco to this toxic chemical. And I did the testing.
Another question, Stephen, when you looked at the report, did you see anything regarding their quality control methods? And what kind of oversight was done over their process?
Very good question. Now, this plumbing premises report did not even indicate what they call a chain of custody, which would document how many samples were taken. I know, I think it was Erwin that said he would always recommend taking a surplus of samples, and I recommend that. Now, a chain of custody would have told me, had it been presented that, for example, 5 samples were properly taken in 40 milliliter septum sealed vials. Since don't have the chain of custody and it was not provided, although that's part of a normal data package that those that sign the report should review. I would have no idea whether the samples were properly taken or improperly taken, whether they were reserve samples so that you could do a quality control measure, for example, called a duplicate result, where you deliberately analyze 2 samples properly taken from the same place, hopefully to get a numbers that are close. So I couldn't tell. Now they might have done it right, they might not have. And furthermore, what the reviewing analyst who signs the reports would say would need would be the duplicate samples, the number of samples taken, where they were taken, and the accompanying calibration data. In other words, that's used to estimate how much is there. So you got to have calibration data.
Okay,
And
but the report was signed, so you didn't see any of the quality control stuff in there, right?
This was not presented in the report, so I can't say they didn't do it.
Okay,
Or I can't say they did do it.
okay, I think there's another question. Any other questions, anybody? Erwin, what do you think?
Go
Okay.
ahead, come on, stump the doc. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's disappointing, but I would call it more than disappointing because of the conclusions that they drew from the data they had are not backed up by the limited amount of data that they presented.
Okay, I got a question then. So in their report, why did they talk about the low water heater temperatures? Do you
Uh,
remember seeing that about the water heater temperatures?
Oh, yeah, yes, the water heater data. Yeah, we didn't really even get into that because in spite of it being called premise plumbing reports, only 2 or 3 of the 271 pages had anything to do with plumbing. And they concluded that I think they found some suspicious residue in one of the heaters that they took apart, but they only took apart one. And they found a material in the bottom that appeared to be what they called, I believe, PFAS jelly or JP5 jelly. And this jelly is not something you'd want to put on your peanut butter for a sandwich. It contains, among other things, it would contain petroleum hydrocarbons, which could then be released if it was heated or ingested if you drank it and you drank micro particles of it. It would be mobilized if you put detergent on it. And that was another issue I had with these, with the military surveys. I warned them because of the popular TV commercial where they're washing oil off ducks, that that got rid of the oil that was on the ducks. But where did that oil go? Well, turns out I have experience in detergents chemicals as well. The detergent chemical would mobilize it and put it into the water, make it more soluble in the water. And not only that, when the water was passed through the carbon filters, which are normally good at removing hydrocarbons, the hydrocarbons available in the jelly would then produce, some of them would go into the water and they would breathe them, particularly if they took the shower, because the shower heats the water up, and also fits the data, the complaints from the people that when they turned their sink on with the aerator in it, it smelled bad and they felt bad. And so that all adds up to coupling with the fact that they've been looking in the wrong place due to their unawareness, apparently, of the solubility thing. And the conclusion is not that it's all okay, is not merited. Besides, they only looked at for this PFAS jelly or JP5 jelly, whatever they wanted to call it. They only looked for it in one sample. Of course, you've got to take the top off the water heater to find it. And so they should have done that more than once in view of the complaints.
I got another
Do it without a complaint.
Okay, we got another question. What effect would flushing while and before sampling have?
Please repeat the question slowly. I didn't catch all of it.
What effect would flushing while and before sampling have?
Flushing is again unnecessary for the first results. And unfortunately, what appears to have happened is when they got a result they didn't like, and this was recently on some peer samples that had the word peer in them, they got a result that no matter how they could shake it was still too high. So what they did was they called it a chlorine quenching. Now, that's not necessary at all if what you're looking at is TPH results. It's only necessary in extremely rare cases if you're looking for what they call disinfection byproducts, which they were not looking for, although I did notice that one of the samples that was displayed before did have some chloroform in it, and chloroform is a disinfection byproduct. And what they did, yeah, and I think I will let that go at that, because we just have, what about swimming pool water, hot tub water? Better to release petroleum hydrocarbons that might be delivered through the water system. And so if you have a hot tub and you're sitting in it, you're going to be, and the water has dissolved gasoline range hydrocarbons in it, as it would if it had been in contact with fuel. You would be breathing more. You would have a higher exposure.
Okay.
And
Other question.
that would be true of taking a shower, would be especially a bad thing to do.
Okay, the other question, would replacing an aerator fixture fix the TPH detections?
The TPH detection, let me go a little bit to the side before I directly answer that question, because it's important in the sense that, again, according to the TV reports, I watch it religiously because I'm trying to weed out things by reading between the lines. The TV said that they had good precision. Now, precision and accuracy are terms used to describe the quality of the results gotten from an analysis. Now, if you can vision a bullseye target, and you're going to throw 3 darts, and you throw 3 darts, precision deals with how close the results are to each other. You throw 3 darts, you completely miss the board, and there's somebody standing next to the board, and you give him 3 shots in the heart and you kill him. That's precise. Now, accuracy is actually the more important. So you look at the same dartboard and you throw 3 shots, and one's in the wall to the extreme right and high, and the other is an extreme left and high, and there's one sticking in the floor. And if you take the average of all 3, you hit it, the average winds up in the bullseye, which is accurate. Now, there's a way you can combat bad accuracy. You could just take more samples. So throw 6 darts or 20 darts, and pretty soon you'll hone on the correct answer. But the accuracy, which is touted as desirable, and I'm not saying it isn't, but that can leave your viewer on the floor with 3 in his heart, very precise, but not exactly a good result. Now, do I believe information from the plumbing report indicates that water heater replacement will? It will if the source of this PFAS jelly is due to the water still being contaminated. And if it is, then you'll build up the jelly again and you'll be in the same danger you were before. If the flushing, for example, say you had 1/8 of a teacup of contamination somewhere in the line, and if they flush, and they did say in their reports that they did flush, if they flush, that might move it out, that 1/8 of a teacup, permanently or only temporarily. If it removed it permanently, then after that, the water would be good to drink. But if it removed it only temporarily, the levels would creep back up again and the water would not be okay to drink. And that's important with this, to consider with this PFAS testing. And there are other technical problems with PFAS testing that they can make better in their program. And I have told them how to do that, but I am not well listened to by the military. And in fact, I cannot fathom
Okay, Steve, the other question,
in place all this time.
Stephen, the question about the aerator on the fixture. Would be,
Excuse me?
would replacing the aerator on the fixture fix the TPH detections?
Yes. If the proper way to sample for TPH, which would be expected to be in the water, would be to remove the aerator. If they did not remove the aerator and they still found some in that range, that would mean the contamination is really, really bad. But again, like I say, if the water had a sheen in it, see, and this was sometimes what caused them to do the testing. The water had a sheen in it, that means that oil phase was still present along with the water phase, and therefore only 1/100th of the soluble compounds, the BTEX and other objectionable hydrocarbons, would go into the water. And when they tested the water, if they did that properly, that would still be expected to be above regulatory levels. But I couldn't say because I don't know what the quality assurance was. I only know that I looked at the chromatograms and those labeled JP5, and I think it was diesel or else just oil. Those which they printed on the chromatogram that it was the fuel, that it was the fuel itself. They didn't show any of these hydrocarbons in the gasoline range because they're not very significant proportionally in the fuels that were spilled. They're just significantly in that part of the fuel which will dissolve in the water and therefore migrate in the water and be subjected to the conditions that could expose individuals who either drank the water, showered in the water, or breathed the air which came out of the aerator or out of the shower.
Okay, Steve, we're gonna go to more questions. So, you're gonna stay on for a while, right?
What?
Are you gonna stay on for a while?
I'll stay on as long as you like. So you think of a question, play Stump the Doc.
We're gonna open it up to other questions and other discussions right now. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm waiting for another question.
Okay, so. Stephen. What do you see?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically what they got to do just to fill in.
Yeah.
I presume you can hear me now. I'm just
So much.
soliciting questions.
Want to do it again?
Ask me something.
Oh yeah, do it again, do it again.
Hello.
So again, just confirming a lot of things, for us on CRI. And then sorry. Erwin, if you have, any comments or anything, I think people want to hear what is this something new to you? Have you read the report?
the premise report?
In general, the premise report doesn't really tell me a whole lot. You know, it really doesn't. So it's hard for me to comment on it. To me, they need to do additional work. And, generally speaking, I agree with some of the concepts that you talked about. With respect to the, when you talked about the chromatogram and, what you heard, the Navy's call, fingerprinting, and it doesn't match up JP5, you've heard that a lot.
Why do you even stop my video?
There is a, what the Navy's actually doing is comparing what you're seeing in the sample with a neat or pure JP5 sample. What's you're collecting, that water sample you're collecting is a mixture of all the past releases. So you're not going to see something that exactly matches JP5. There's this terrific publication called Petroleum Chemicals and Metabolites. It was prepared by the San Francisco Water Resources Control Board. And actually Meredith Wilson gave me a citation. And read that. It's a terrific discussion about patterns, why they're not the same. This explanation, you hear this thing about the hump, yeah. And some of the things that the Navy talks about biogenic kinds of petroleum, we've heard that. This publication really talks about all of that and really kind of explains that really what you really need to do is measure everything. Conservatively assume everything that you're measuring is TPHG, O, and D, and take that result for everything that you're measuring. You've also heard the Navy talk about treating the water samples with silica gel. Heard that, and that takes out all of the polar compounds or the metabolites. Everything weathers or degrades in the environment. There's going to be a certain amount of degradation. And when you collect this water sample, you're going to be measuring everything. The original JP or petroleum, you're going to measure what's been weathered all at the same time. And you're going to get this very complex kind of a chromatogram or fingerprint, if you will. And then you take that and match it against something that's neat. Of course, it's not going to look the same. And so this publication really says don't do silica gel cleaning, measure everything and assume it's all there conservatively, because you're dealing with a mixture. At the end of the day, you're dealing with an extremely complex mixture of weathered, unweathered material with very high concentration or in amounts that we know has affected many people. So treat it conservatively. Take all the measurements seriously. And to, I think, Marty's question, what kinds of testing should be happening? If the Navy or the Department of Health is really not clear about what they have measured in the past, my recommendation is to get another, what I call a reference laboratory. Have them go and analyze the sample independent of what the Navy is doing. So don't let the regulators look at it, don't let the Navy look at it, and have a referee laboratory go and collect samples, analyze it, and produce those results and make an assessment of what those results say.
Can you speculate what could possibly be going on if we are seeing high TPH readings at AMR when there's a gap, an additional gap filter between the, where the Navy water source is pulling from and, right, so like AMR is over here on one side, right? They're on the Navy water lines, but the Army has installed a gap before the water gets into AMR, and yet we're still seeing TPH levels at the AMR housing facility. Theories? Why is that happening? Because it's already in there. The TPH is already, the pipes are contaminated from before,
Okay.
and so having the gap doesn't, is that the
Right.
theory?
Let's take a look at this table. All right, take a look at this table. Okay? I take chocolate pudding, smear it on this table. Okay? I take this part, take a nice clean it. Still got chocolate pudding over here, yeah? Even if I'm cleaning it, still have chocolate pudding on this side of the table, correct? So when the water is initially, when that water's, that contaminated water from Red Hill Shaft entered the water system, it went everywhere. Okay? It went everywhere and exposed the pipeline throughout the entire water system. Some parts of it was exposed very heavy. In other words, that initial large concentration, as it entered the water system, that portion was going to get a lot more exposure than farther away, but it's still going to get exposed. Now, you stop Red Hill Shaft, you pump Wyalba Shaft water in there. It's what now? That water is now traveling and coming into contact with the pipeline that was actually exposed previously, correct? Right? Doesn't that make sense? Now, I take some of that water out, treat it, and pump it back into that same pipeline system that was previously exposed. All you're doing is cleaning it and re-exposing it again. You're not making any.
Even though they flush the pipes, it doesn't wash it out.
Well, if you think about it, the water system has been operating for the last 2 years, and Wyalba Shaft has been pumping water into this water system. You're still seeing this low level detection.
Yeah.
Okay, to me, what it suggests is that it doesn't.
We were watching that back and that. Sorry. From the storm team said, oh, well, you know, we flushed and we just know the water, there's no leak. What the church? Yes.
That's a correct answer. When that pipeline came in contact with that fuel, that pipeline exposed that fuel. Oil and water don't make it. Just take your favorite glass bowl, make your favorite salad, put your oil and water vinegar and oil mixture in there, have that, mix it up. After you're done, try to clean that glass bowl with a paper towel. You can keep going, keep cleaning it, and you won't take that oil out. You'll see that cleaner there. In order to take that out, you've got to put some kind of detergent in there. You essentially lift that oil off the glass, get it soluble into water. That's how soaps work, by the way. That's how detergents work. Detergents are complex chemicals. One side is the side that likes the oil, but the other side likes the water. The side that likes the oil grabs onto the organics. The side with the water carries it into the water. That's how detergents work. Okay, that's it. I teach a little chemistry here. Okay,
So we
so
got that from, what's his face, Waldron, at the FCAT, gave us chemistry 101.
I heard some of that. I don't know what chemistry. I heard some. Yeah. Probably gonna have price. Accurate consumer. That way, possible risk to you all. A lot. A lot. When you have like a cast iron pipe, you have corrosion products forming in a very old cast iron pipe. What does that do? Well, first of all, the inside of the pipe is not a smooth surface because you have all these corrosion products. But the corrosion products also provides additional surface area. So when that oil, the water, when that contaminated water went through that, it gave more surface area in which the oil to actually come in contact with that. We're trying to flush it out of that very irregular kind of surface. It becomes even harder. It's not like a smooth surface. Yeah, imagine something that's smooth as opposed to something that's irregular with a lot of corrosion. That increases the surface area. And that, what that means is that there's potentially more oil, petroleum contamination inside of that pipe.
All kind of, little secrets on this side.
Well, there's actually, actual irregular surfaces. And that creates surfaces.
Yeah. So with that being said, unless there's some kind of like you said, lift it up. It's honestly maybe like the elephant in the room. What would be the actual best way to kind of set it out the whole system, the whole
Because if you think about it, that Navy's water system, I don't know how many miles of pipeline. But if you think about all those miles of pipeline, let's say you're gonna put some kind of detergent in there, to clean that out. What do you do with that detergent water? Where do you put it? In the wastewater system?
Oh, I understand.
I mean, what do you do with it? Yeah, you have a huge problem, potentially an environmental problem. Because you're essentially taking the contamination and moving it from one environmental medium, which is the water pipeline, to another environmental medium. Yeah, which is outside the pipeline. So you got to kind of think about this. To me, the easiest, or well, it's not the easiest, it's an expensive proposition, no doubt about it. It's not going to happen overnight, is to replace the pipeline. Short of that, keep the existing pipeline there, use it for non-potable firefighting, non-potable water use, and then lay another pipeline strictly for potable water.
So what about the pipe going into the home?
The pipes going into the home, same thing. We either leave it there and put another one and abandon the one that's there, or replace it.
I
Some
like
of-
that something about the gas and the water, I think. Marty brought it up, but the gas never got placed immediately. So the water had already gone through the pipe. Then they brought the gas in the middle of December. But the premise was that, not premise, but the premise was that the gas would filter everything out. And what's happening is that we're proving that it's not.
Well, it's getting recontaminated.
Yeah.
I mean, if the activated carbon is moving the petroleum that you take out of the water, you take that same water, you put it back into the same pipeline. All you're doing is recontaminating everything. That's all you're doing.
Is there any filter or number of filters or specific filters that could actually take what's in there now out before?
Well, activated carbon is one way to take it out. I mean, the best way to know that, or to answer your question, is do a treatment study. Look at different ways of removing it, like activated carbon. There could be activated carbon, oxidation, with some combination of different techniques to remove it. But ultimately, I think one of the basic questions going to be out of any kind of treatment is, how good is good? Is it zero? You can't measure zero.
They've never shared any data.
Yeah.
They're doing it with that.
Yeah, so, treatment comes with its challenges too. Okay. Yes, you can treat it. In most cases, when you have a regulatory standard, let's say like, for example, arsenic. We know arsenic, anything below 10 is acceptable. Anything above 10 is not. There's an actual standard. So if you see it to below 10, you know it's safe, it's sure.
Well, I
But
have
that's
been
a
checking the
single
chat, and I've
contaminant,
been trying to
contaminant.
answer, but I'm
Petroleum
not
is not
sure
like
that,
that. You've got
my
multiple
answers are
contaminants
being
in there.
allowed. And
And they
I'm
all are,
trouble
they
hearing
all
some of the
coexist.
questions.
Should we be advocating for now to just shut the pipes down, or like replace the pipes?
They should be replacing the pipe.
You would have ultimate authority over condemning the funding. What we're condemning for the water.
Well, at the end of the day, it's the water system. It's the water, it's the Navy that has to make that decision. Certainly, a regulatory agency can have some influence in the process. But the regulatory agency, again, in EPA's case, they're looking at they're looking at this levels in relation to some number, 266. So long as below that number, they're gonna say it's acceptable. But the reality is that there are still people reporting illnesses. You have to take that into account. You have to consider that. So what that tells you is that something is not acceptable. The most conservative approach would be to abandon the pipes and put in a new one. Yeah. Same thing with the hot water heater. Okay, you test it, you find some petroleum, you replace that hot water heater. Okay, it's brand new. Guess what? You got that contaminated water going back into the hot, you just recontaminating the hot water heater. Right, doesn't that make kind of common sense?
So they're interchangeable, because a thing was put on the roof, and it has a line sometimes, little pipe. It takes, water, molecules of ambient air, we just don't usually. They have a big amount of shower. So the idea being, every time I got home, but it's all, everything, they're all. Then maybe for God, maybe the contaminant deadline for toilet water, and maybe laundry. Yeah. You flush the toilet and you're gonna get sick. Yeah. And so at the very least, it could, maybe we do central, washing. But you could provide, water to your and not reuse
You're not gonna admit it, anything. Thank you. Next question.
Any other questions?
Another thing with gas, the gap is going, there's nothing about the actual timeline, right? The gap would be useful for the pipelines, and the drinking water,
Right.
the water, domestic water use, but, eventually, you will, other, circulating into the different waters, and there's no amount of gas.
There's another part to that, it's called the environmental side.
Okay.
With the soil monitoring.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Any other questions, Owen? Okay, oh, yeah, right on, question there.
This is maybe a little less technical. But does the governor have any power to get military to move? I'm not sure about that one. I'm not sure about the other one.
But the problem we have is that the military leases are gonna be up soon. And so they need to like make sure that they look good and look like they're doing something. So they're not necessarily being effective, or from what we just heard tonight, they're not looking in the right places, maybe on purpose. So I think tonight was good. And I just wanted to see if anybody wanted, we don't have time to like process everything. That would take a couple more hours. But any thoughts from what you heard tonight? Anything
you know, that sticks out? Or, I mean, I think a lot of this needs to come out to the public more. But how do we get it out to them? Like, how do we process what we just heard? And then get it out to the public in a easily digestible way?
Well, maybe, Erwin can do a paper.
Well, I think we could do a paper. And then we can send him an envelope that, you know, an anonymous envelope and go, can you check this? And then take that back and then send it out to the community or something like that. I mean, I just think that there are things that was said here tonight. Like, for example, it could be in the air, right? I don't know how many stories I've heard of families throwing up in the showers. That's a common thing. So and when you take a shower, you use hot water. So that's one thing, you know, that's another. So I think there's things that we learned tonight that maybe we could get out, but anybody have any thoughts or anything they want to share? You can come up to the mic.
Yeah, any other questions?
Oh, and can we say thank you, Ray? Thank you. What about 1 more minute? And then we just gotta close up. Thanks. Here, you want to share? Make it like 2 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, for me, right? I mean, I haven't been attending all your folks' events as of lately, but I just shared the gist of it. Since, you know, I am one of the affected family members, as most of you guys know, that is also born and raised here and still have hundreds of my ohana still living on this island, thankfully, and, you know, we're all Hawaiian. So I share it, just a brief on social media. And it has caught so much attention, not just on Hawaii, but beyond. And a lot of military families and those, that thought they supported our military. So I just believe that if we can just share just tad bit and make it concerning, make it interesting, but make it just short and brief, even in your stories, even in your reels, I think that will catch a lot of attention and make it to where others outside of Hawaii and on Oahu will listen. Because there's so many of our born and raised locals that do not even know. Do not even know. They think you have to be at Red Hill to get affected. So they don't even know that you can get it from food, washing dishes, you know, washing your hands, you know, washing your hair, taking care of your dog and whatnot, you know. So just sharing stuff like that, just small little bits and pieces each day or every week. Just keep doing it. That's what I've been doing for the past 2.5 years. 2 minutes, yeah.
I'll make this quick. I just thank you very much to everybody who talked tonight. Thank you for the experts. It's hard to understand this kind of thing. What we know is that there's been an ongoing problem and that we weren't being told the truth because we've moved further away from answers. We've actually gone backwards with what's being said publicly by the Navy. So anyways, I just want to say thank you because without having the truth, we'll never move closer to a solution. So just even hearing what was said tonight, although shocking and unbelievable, it makes me really happy because the truth is what we need. We cannot get a solution without that. So thank you.
The only way you can get gaslighted is if you don't educate yourself. So the more you know, the less likely they can succeed in gaslighting. And so one of the reasons why we have this section was to start learning a little bit more. It's in their documents. They contradict themselves constantly. Their data is partial. It's never the full data. So the more you know about the data, the more you understand about what they're required to do, what it means, what the impact is to everybody, the better. And the only way to do that in Hawaii, the way I do business, and I've been doing business for 30 years, is I don't run ads. I don't have any kind of presence. It's word of mouth. So as you guys talk to each other from family to family, and one of the things I learned about the military families, they talk to each other all the time. So through social media, however you guys do it, share whatever information you have. the little bit that everybody learns each time grows. And the more knowledge that grows out there, the harder it is for them to gaslight us.
Oh, yeah.
It's Ask Steven.
Oh, okay, you want to talk about questions?
Oh, sure. Susan Burmachang, I'm part of the CRI, and I'm in charge of recording all the questions that we've been asking them, which are now up to 300 some. Like maybe 90 of which have been answered, but anyway, we're gonna keep a document of running total. So if you have a question, I got a bunch of them tonight. Thank you so much from everybody's ideas. I'm gonna include on there. And maybe I can put my email up there. If you have a question you want to ask them, maybe like you go to bed tonight and go, oh, I should have asked this. Maybe email that to me and we'll just keep asking them. And at some point also, I think maybe we could get some of our legislators involved in saying, hey, we have asked this many questions and they've only answered this many. They're really not taking the CRA seriously, and they're really not answering our questions. And the other thing is, maybe I want to bring up was, it might be interesting to have like a letter to the editor drive, like so that a group of us can get together, we can kind of support each other. This is how you do an LTE, and then like schedule it out. Like could be Monday, I'll send mine. Tuesday, I'll send mine. You know, and so that every day there would be something on Red Hill. I think that would be so awesome. Just to get the word out there, because I always read the letters to the editor because they're from people like us. And so I think the more of that gets out, that might be another avenue. So I will put my email up there. Thank you.
Is that okay?
Oh, it is. Okay, sure. Yeah.
I'll delete it.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know, but and my idea was, you know how we got all the neighborhood boards to sign and the resolution to shut down? I wonder if that's the way, and just piggybacking off of Walter, where by word of mouth through the neighborhood boards, because our beach one is this Thursday after the court case of Honokia, and you just advocate for just shutting down the pipe. Because I cannot imagine doing this forever and just kind of then doing, being whether incompetent on purpose, the gaslighting, hiding the truth, and to just keep doing this and knowing that the leases are coming up, so the push is gonna just be now, you just shut down the pipe. So maybe do neighborhood boards, yeah.
Now, anybody else want to say something?
Yeah, I'd like that. Yeah, I and the current question of what the media is out there trying to explain to us.
Okay, so his question is, our perception of local media coverage, are we discouraged or encouraged? I would say it's 50-50 for me, but anybody else have other thoughts? There are good, some reporters get it and it takes a while. The hard part is when they send a new reporter who doesn't have any history on it. And you gotta really sit down with that person and kind of, what you said there in that article wasn't correct. Or like it's actually really dangerous because we're talking about families and whether or not we want to encourage them to keep drinking the water. So if you put a headline that says, oh, the water is safe, then that would actually endanger residents rather than help them. It's not educating them. So, and I hope that answers your question.
They don't want to educate you.
Yeah.
They're giving us the platform, so that's good,
Yes.
but the information is surface level. and
Yeah.
Doesn't go beyond, let me verify with what they say, and then they say
Yeah.
the same thing, and then it stops there. But
Yeah.
people like Christina Jetta, obviously some journalists have more credibility on this issue than others.
I think I'm not even interested.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so there are reporters. They do their homework. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
It's budget is so big, the Navy's property.
Yeah.
Budget is just like, yeah. We're
It's
all
huge.
volunteers. And that's really frustrating.
And then it's like your base in our website.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Yeah,
I just top of mind, I just saw it in the car advertisement, like, Oriole and everything, and the new price is like.
Yeah.
And that like is one thing.
no, yeah, the editorial was actually really good. I think I read that same one. And they said the Navy has to answer the questions in the CRI. So, which is right now at over 300. They answered 90, but 40 to our satisfaction. So there's a lot of outstanding questions, and I'm wondering if we could ask some of those questions to your friend. Stephen?
He's still
Dr.
on.
I'm
Yeah,
still
so we
here.
could send him some of those questions. We could compare the answers. Because he's paying attention, he's reading the data and watching the news. That's what he was saying. Okay, so I think that's all the time we have. But you know, hopefully everybody found this was helpful. And it was really about empowering the community to do your own research. It is a lot. It's a lot of information. The website can be overwhelming when you just look at it. So hopefully it's now like approachable. You can actually work on the website. I want to thank Keone DeFranco, who's also a sub for the CRI, for hosting us. And I want to thank Rosalie for doing the great job on the Zoom. Awesome. And then also Madison, thank you so much for all your help picking up the food and everything. And then please take home food. There's so much food left. There's Lucy Bees. You can throw them in the icebox and warm them up tomorrow for lunch or something. So thank you. Oh, and one more thing. So, and thank you to Kalahui Hawaii, Mutual Aid, Kalahui, for paying for the food. So they are a sponsor of the CRI. They've been paying for the food every month. And you know, whatever expenses, we're trying to raise money for some of the expenses that we do have. Thank you. The next CRI meeting, good question.
April 18th.
April 18th.
And so we're having a hard time finding a location for it, so we're thinking maybe, I'm just gonna throw this out there to the group. But maybe the April 18th meeting is all online, and we all just go on Zoom. Because we're having such a hard time finding an actual.
All online.
Spot. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, so we'll put it out on Instagram. when we get it
Yeah.
online.
Yes, you're recording this, right? Yeah.
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 Yeah, there is.
People, it'll be posted on it.
Everyone will get an email and we'll also share it on social.
Yeah. We do.
Yeah.
Right, maybe.
Yeah, we could do that. Okay. No, thank you. Thanks everyone for coming. You have something to say?
Well, just wanted to give you a hug.
Oh.